Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and
Okay.
clear. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna. And thank you, Heather. Thanks all the other readers. Anna, Catherine, can't tell you how grateful we are for this beautiful magazine and for this chance to get together. Um, I'll just read 4 or 5 poems, and I don't have a lot to say. Uh, you know, this poem is called "In Which a Spider Weaves a Web on My Computer Screen." It's in 2 parts. What is that shadow that weaves itself so fine across the edge of my computer screen? There it is, the pinprick of a spider weaving a web I'm looking through, as if it were a veil of second sight that, as I type these words behind the veil, the screen light shines right through. It weaves the sun into its web and turns the screen into a mirror, reflecting my own eyes looking at the spider and wondering what the spider knows of me. Hello, pal, I want to say, but that feels unctuous, overly familiar for what I know I'm going to do. The web sways and ripples each time I breathe, getting ready to rip it away. There's a lot of casual brutality to reconcile. The spider clings to its web's outer rim, plucks with a slender leg a near invisible guy wire each time I type a word and the silk trembles. 2. He said that being a refugee was like living like a spider in the bottom of a well. He held his quiet dignity close to him. The others in the room stopped talking. I won't repeat exactly what he said, since it's his to tell, but it had to do with how his mother died, how his home was destroyed. The words you use to talk about such things, the second they're uttered, sound suspect. For him to say, the soldiers shot my father, they blew up our house, and the worst thing I ever saw, the very worst, was seeing my baby brother crying on my dead mother's breast, is only my rendering in English what the translator, speaking in French, said he said. Raveled in words, as a spider is raveled in its silk, I think I should know what to want to say, but to want to say is not what the man, in his use of a figure of a spider drifting suspended, tethered to a lifeline, spinning out impossibly fine, intends when he says, the deeds to my house are stained with blood, and then shows you the stains. 3 long stains, dried brown and fading above the signature line. This next poem is called Ostrich. It's for a friend of mine who died. I'm sure some of you know this person. Your face turns to smoke again and again behind the tinted window of our generation that dies with such precision. It's ludicrous to mourn us. Itchy arguers who aspired to have a conscience. You're dead, I know, but I still talk to you, hand cupped to your ear, talking the world into a corner, loving the fragility of forgiving yourself, what your enemies and sometimes your friends couldn't forgive. Some called you out, Some called you the last ostrich of honesty. Your long dying is finally dead, I know, but I still talk to you. The distance our anti-intimacy must still cross. I knew you well enough to be afraid of you and love you, to know your elsewhere is my only here, to long to hear your fingers typing in the ether one of your barbed-wired letters that every time I read cuts into my palms. You put your hand on the glass. I put my hand over yours, palm to palm, not touching. Unless heat radiating through glass is a kind of touching. This next poem is called False Teeth. And it was from my aunt, Pauline Typhoon. After the viewing, they took her new false teeth, inhumanly gleaming out of her mouth, then slid her body in the oven and turned up the flame. They offered them to me as a keepsake, a remembrance, but I turned them down. All I wanted to see, all I wanted to remember was the old wrecked acropolis of her shattered grin. She whose soul had been tight-jawed, gap-toothed, a cavity-drilled dissenter, possessed in her new dentures the permanent reminder of how all those years she'd hidden her shame smile. It was as if the porcelain grins of the one she called the bosses and hated with the purity of a blowtorch cutting steel had become her grin, mocking her from the water glass she shook them in at night. Their perfect alignment and corrected overbite become my little nightmare, gnashing, tearing, hyperbolic in their appetite, as if they embodied hunger stripped of any satisfaction. The anti-food of hunger, hungering to eat and eat, never stopping, chewing the void between each tooth to the least nano of a nothing. Once, when I went to see her, and she still recalled her name, I saw her staring at those teeth, saying something like gobble, 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 but might have been her mumbling nonsense syllables while those teeth faced her down, square and perfect, no jaw or skull to detract from their exactness, knowing nothing of all her years driving Jersey's backcountry roads, checking in on what she called God's beloved crazies, though she didn't believe in God, nor did she see them as crazy. The social services lady who went house to house and got Millie out of her locked room, took Arthur to a matinee where he pissed himself, and she had to clean him up in the men's while the teenage ushers looked the other way. Once she drove me to an abandoned house where a dentist had his surgery. The chair still there, kapok on the floor, even the little pedal he pumped with his foot to drive the drill, windows broken, stained posters of dancing, gleaming teeth, as a hand without an arm brushes that smile to little sparkles leaping from two pink gums. Just why or what we did fades into my looking into her mouth, at the wildly spaced voids between each tooth as she talked to another lady. But if you think I'm going to tell you what I saw, play the little boy smitten with the flawed, go back and read again. I said nothing about her smile being anything but a cause of shame, nothing about a husband, a child, a female lover, though she lived with a woman named Joy who brought her anything but. haranguing her in old age to change and change again her paltry will. Instead, her dream of overcoming the rich for the kingdom of the poor, all those years she hid her teeth behind her hand, vanished in one instant of these new damned teeth that make everything taste like metal, as straight and even as these pretty boy newscasters shoving their perfect mugs into your face. And then I'll just read two more short. This poem is called Words from Chernobyl. The sun beat down on me. Birds were nesting. Graves were being dug. The army gave us gloves, respirators, surgical robes. The sun beat down on us. We were living in this parallel, not Earth world, where the apocalypse met the Stone Age. We were trolls, demons showing up in people's yards, and our job was to bury everything. Bugs, spiders, worms, all colors, all killed by hundreds, thousands. We rolled them all up in big plastic sheets, not knowing what they were called, these bugs, spiders, worms, destroying their houses, secrets, and we buried them, including the soil. We buried in the soil, earth to earth. And that's what I remember most, burying the bugs, spiders, leeches. When they sent me there in spring, birds were nesting. Everything was giving birth. The place was so awful because it was so beautiful. And when they let me leave, radioactive apples glowed against the snow. They told us we had to win, but against what? Physics, the universe, the atom? There's a parable about a guy who lived in Jerusalem and Christ was staggering right past his home. He watched him collapse under the cross and cry out. He saw all this, but his tooth hurt, so he didn't run outside. And 2 days later, when his tooth stopped hurting, people told him, Christ has risen. And he thought, I could have been a witness to it, but my tooth hurt. So is that how it always is? 1 minute ants are crawling along a branch, the sun beats down on it. It's just your average chaos. And the next, it's why don't you all go fuck yourselves? My dad defended Moscow in 1942. But it was only through books and movies he found too tedious to finish that he realized years later what he'd been through. His own memory of the great event was, I sat in a trench, shot my rifle, got buried by an explosion. They dug me out half alive. That's it. My dad liked to say that people shoot, but it's God who guides the bullet. And then here's the last poem. And it's the poem that comes from the anthology. And I've been in the habit of writing a poem for my mother almost for the last decade, every year. And this is for their 92nd birthday. She's now 96. So who knows how many more there will be. And anyway, this poem just takes off. There's a wonderful passage in Moby Dick in which he describes how the whale's eyes are located on either side of its head. So it can't see what's in front of it and it can't see what's in back of it. All it can see is what's to the side of it as it's moving through it. So the future is closed and the past isn't there. So my mother, as the eyes of a whale on her 92nd birthday, And the thing that's interesting is that can the whale see two separate images in its two separate eyes at the same time? Ripples racked to chop inside the harbor, swell blown back to whitewater, deep ocean drawing a dark line. The whale turns emerald, passing under the stern, pupils tiny and the huge maul head, eyes the size of a colt's eyes, but located like its ears on either side of the head, so that the pupils can't see what's coming from behind, nor what's swimming toward it from the future. As if the salt and pepper head were to tower upward like a great mountain between two lakes in the valley, so that your pained eyes would always see two different sights at the same time. In one eye, your sleepless nights, in the other, your drifting, lightless zones. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you so much, Tom. That was amazing. Really, it's such a pleasure to hear everyone read their own poems. I was taking a kind of a stab, a whack at reading some of the poems from the anthology, and um, it is a revelation to hear you read your own poems. It's really a remarkable. Thank you.